You know what, guys? I've noticed that while technology progresses, some things that we wish remained around are left behind. Just take a look at the trend of notebooks these days. They are much more powerful than they ever were, and they can now be amazingly portable. But something as simple as battery life hasn't improved over the past few years. Look, laptops have evolved significantly over the past decade. My first one when I arrived to Canada was about 8 years ago, and it was this HP G60. I loved it, and looking at it right now brings back some memories. It took me through high school, and it's what got me started to think about tech and pursuing it as a career. I've even edited a few videos on it, but none of you guys will ever see that. But sadly, like any other piece of tech, this trusty old HP started to show its age, and eventually the display gave up on me. But it still works as a machine, although you have to connect it to an external display. Like I said, it's amazing to see how technology progresses, and here is an excellent example of that. This is the new LG Gram 15. Just look at this thing. When the G60 was around, people would have thought the Gram came from something out of Star Trek. They'd be blown away that this is an actual laptop, and even now I find it hard not to stare at what LG has created. So let's take a look at the Gram 15, but first a message from our sponsor.
The Pure Base 600 is now available with a tempered glass panel with an easy mount, a couple of Pure Wings 2 fans, one of which is 140mm, with 3 modular interior drive caddies along with dual SSD brackets. Have nothing to hide with a Be Quiet Pure Base 600.
With the Gram 15, LG really did flex some engineering muscle. It's just 0.6 inches thick, or thin if you'd like to say it that way. But what's unique about this machine is how light it is. Weighing in at just under 2.5 pounds, you wouldn't even notice if it's in your backpack. That's a lot different than my original 9.5 pound HP, which felt like a brick no matter how I carried it. Other than the lightweight design, this little notebook's other selling point is its supposedly amazing battery life. LG claims that with a custom 60 watt-hour battery that uses carbon nanotube technology, the Gram will run for about 24 hours while being used for basic tasks like word processing and website browsing. An ultra thin and light laptop with that kind of battery life would be amazing, but let's just see how well that plays. Now let's talk pricing. The fully spec'd out machine is expensive at $1,700 with dual-core quad-thread Kaby Lake i7. That's actually the same processor as the Gigabyte Bricks that we reviewed a little while ago. It also comes with 16GB of RAM and a 512GB SATA based SSD. The lower tier Gram is less powerful, but it's also more affordable at $1,200 with better battery life, plus 14 and 13-inch models are also available with the same larger 60 watt-hour battery, giving users a lot of options with the price as low as $1,000 for the 13-inch i5 Gram. If you take the higher tier model and compare it to something like the Dell XPS 15 that almost matches the size of the Gram, they have different priorities. So the Dell focuses on performance rather than giving you an ultra lightweight body and crazy battery life like the Gram. Actually, one of the closest alternatives is likely Lenovo's current X1 Carbon that goes for a lot more money, but it's also backed by amazing build quality. While being thin, the Gram does not compromise on port selection. On the right, you get a Kensington lock, USB 2.0 and 3.0 ports, a headphone jack, and oddly a micro SD card reader. I'm pretty sure most of you would appreciate a full-size card slot, so LG, please fix that in the next revision. Switching over to the left side, there's power in, an extra USB 3.0 port, a full-size HDMI port, and a USB Type-C port, which does not support Thunderbolt. You get all the essentials of a basic laptop without needing to carry any dongles like what you would do with Apple's offerings. Plus, as a bonus, LG does include a USB Type-C to RJ45 LAN port adapter, so I'm pretty sure that would come in handy during travel. What's also interesting about the Gram 15 is that they've managed to fit a 15.6-inch IPS display inside a 14-inch form factor, which not only reduces the overall footprint of an average 15-inch laptop, but you're getting the exact same screen real estate without losing resolution. And those bezels. Oh, those bezels. They're almost non-existent, especially when you're watching videos or even while casually browsing the web. Unfortunately, the bezel size compromises the webcam placement, which is really at an odd location because, like you can see, it points up at my nose. Now, given the Gram has an IPS panel, viewing angles and contrast ratio are great, but not the best that I've come across. It also doesn't get too bright, especially when you're taking this on daylight conditions. It's probably not the best. This is also a touchscreen, although I couldn't really take advantage of that feature simply because the screen wobbled every time I tapped on a window. Speaking of design, the Gram looks beautiful. The whole body is crafted of magnesium alloy, which contributes to the lightweight without sacrificing durability, but I'd like to challenge that claim. To me, the chassis doesn't feel as durable as an all-aluminum construction, and it's also not cheap to produce. There are barely any signs of flex on the palm rest area and the keyboard, which is awesome. However, the lid could pose some problems since it really did bow when I tried flexing it. The keyboard includes a full-size numpad, which could be useful if you work with a lot of numbers, and the keys exhibit great tactile feedback, so typing in general was a pleasant experience. Then again, keyboard feedback is a very personal thing, so let's just say I really like this one. They've also made it backlit with a 2-step brightness adjustment, and on such a thin chassis, that's pretty amazing. Following up with the trackpad, it's almost perfect, but not quite there yet, like the ones found on the Surface Book or the XPS 15. The surface is really smooth for finger navigation, and the primary left and right buttons are integrated at the bottom. Tracking for the most part was accurate. I did not notice stutters or lag, so you can comfortably get work done without an external mouse. Also, the screen can be opened with just a single hand, and while it's not a super exciting feature, it's really hard to find laptops these days that do that other than the MacBooks or the Razer Blade. So with all the features out of the way, what was it like using the Gram 15? Well, after a few weeks of getting acquainted with it, there were absolutely no problems with script editing and media consumption. Performance was just as expected. The ultra low voltage processor won't render 4K videos or perform heavily demanding tasks, but the system was really responsive. Sure, you can definitely get away with some light Photoshop work and maybe a little bit of video editing at 1080p, but be aware of your limitations. Also, the system was dead quiet under idle situations, and the fans do ramp up slightly under load, but not too loud. As for temperatures, the Gram ran surprisingly cool over my course of testing. Other than running a few benchmarks, it really did get warm slightly to the touch, but it's nothing to be worried about. Now, just for fun, I put the Gram up against my old HP to see what nearly 8 years of progress looks like, and the results are really amazing. Even with such a thin and light design, new technology kicks some serious butt. I mean, look, these results were expected, but it's still incredible to see it firsthand. Battery life is actually something I need to take a little while to discuss since it's one of Gram's primary marketing points. Without it hitting a long amount of time without recharging, there's really no use of spending $1,700, right? With LG's previous Gram notebooks, the reviews were not that positive when it came to battery life, but since the capacity has gone from just over 30 watt-hours to 60 watt-hours, and of course the power-efficient Kaby Lake processors help as well, so did all of those changes make a difference? I'd say so. I was averaging a little more than 11 hours performing casual work, and while consuming content, the notebook dipped a little below 9 hours. Still, that's a lot of juice to get you throughout the day, but it definitely isn't all-day battery life like what LG is claiming. Was I impressed though? Definitely, this is the longest battery I've gotten out of any notebook so far. One thing I was a little concerned about was the power connector. It looks fragile and it requires a little more force to plug in than I'm used to, so I'd be extra careful with that. But on a positive side, the power brick is super portable and easy to toss into a backpack or carrying case. The speakers are not the best. They're located at the bottom with a slight cutout facing the surface, which kills clarity in the vocals if you're listening to music or even watching movies. Bass is completely non-existent, and so I'd highly recommend getting a good pair of headphones for the best listening experience. And thankfully, the onboard audio jack has a really good DAC to drive mid-range headphones like my HD 598s. So, should you get the Gram 15 from LG? It really depends on your demands. It's not for every power user, and it's super expensive for people who are just looking to browse the web. It's somewhere in between, giving you the best of both worlds, that is performance and battery life. If you're looking for a thin and light ultrabook that can get you throughout the day with excellent battery life, this is the notebook to get. The battery life is one of the best I've seen on a Windows notebook, and you're not losing a lot on performance either. Personally, I find that there's better value spent on something like the Dell XPS 15 because it has the specs to justify its price tag. But for an on-the-go user who doesn't require a lot of processing power like video editing or anything that is super intensive, the Gram would be a perfect fit. And that's where I'm going to end this review. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the LG Gram 15. Would you spend $1,700 on this notebook, or are there any alternatives that you might be interested in, like the Dell XPS 15 or the Dell XPS 13? Let us know in the comments down below. I'm Ivor with Canucks. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.